Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we slice through the noise, grab a stack of sources, and pull out the most important insights, giving you a real shortcut to being well-informed.
Great to be diving in.
Today, we're setting the scene in 18th century British India. Picture this, a time of just unbelievable change, where a trading company starts morphing into a ruling empire.
A massive transformation.
And right at the heart of this whirlwind, a figure whose name still sparks, well, fierce debate, Warren Hastings.
It's a truly fascinating story, really complex. You've got administrative genius kind of flashing with political intrigue, and even some surprising personal connections.
It's like the Jane Austen link. That's wild.
Yeah, apparently known as her cousin's natural father.
Yeah.
And he married an Anne Elliot in India way back in 1756. Strange connections.
That's where it gets really interesting, isn't it? Our mission in this deep dive is to unpack that incredibly complex story. We'll follow Warren Hastings' journey from, a humble clerk for the East India Company,
Quite the climb.
all the way to becoming the first Governor General of Bengal. We'll dive into the sweeping administrative, financial, and judicial reforms he pushed through, all driven by this philosophy he famously called governing the conquered in their own way.
A very significant phrase, that.
But, and this is a big but, we're also going to confront the controversies, the accusations of corruption that led to, the longest political trial in British history, his impeachment.
An absolute epic.
And see what his actions and that trial reveal about the very nature of British imperialism as it evolved.
Okay, so to set the stage properly, picture Hastings arriving in Bengal in 1772.
Yeah.
The situation he walked into was nothing short of a catastrophe.
Right.
Robert Clive's dual government, this system where the company collected revenue but sort of delegated administrative and judicial duties.
Yeah.
It had basically created widespread confusion and chaos.
Total mess.
Pretty much. The treasury was empty, revenue collection was erratic, a terrible famine had just devastated the country. On top of that, you had bands of robbers infesting the land.
Oh, wow.
And serious external threats. The powerful Marathas under Peshwa Madhav Rao, the Mughal Emperor Shah Alam, who'd allied with the Marathas, and Hyder Ali down in the Deccan.
So he steps into an absolute hornet's nest. How much did that utter chaos truly force his hand towards this idea of governing the conquered in their own way? Was it idealism or just, practical necessity?
That's a really good question. While Hastings certainly had an intellectual curiosity about India, this philosophy was, well, deeply rooted in pragmatism, let's be clear.
Okay.
The British were vastly outnumbered. Previous heavy-handed policies had already sparked revolts. Hastings realized quite astutely that for British rule to be sustainable, it couldn't just impose foreign laws and customs wholesale.
It wouldn't stick.
Exactly. It needed some degree of legitimacy, and that meant understanding and working with, rather than just steamrolling over existing Indian societal structures. It was fundamentally a strategic imperative.
And a major practical step in that direction was his strong support for the Asiatic Society of Bengal, right?
Yeah.
Established in Calcutta, 1784.
Yes, founded by Sir William Jones. This institution became absolutely central to the British effort to really study Indian civilization.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just academic, like you said.
No.
No, it was a practical tool for better governance. The achievements were profound. Scholars began systematic studies of Sanskrit literature, bringing texts like the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads to British attention.
Groundbreaking stuff for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They meticulously documented local laws and customs, which was incredibly valuable for administrators on the ground. This work, well, it fostered a deeper appreciation for the sophistication of Indian traditions, but it was also, you could say, a form of intellectual mapping, understanding the society to rule it better.
So if I'm getting this right, it was all about language and law, fundamentally.
Pretty much, yeah.
They pushed for Indian language studies, dictionaries, grammars, crucial tools, and by deeply studying Hindu and Islamic legal texts, British officials could actually make judicial decisions based on the personal laws of those communities. Apply the correct law, that must have been revolutionary.
It was a massive shift. It marked a clear move toward adapting and, well, collaborating with traditional Indian governance systems rather than just trying to wipe the slate clean.
Right.
This meant understanding the roles of zamindars, the hereditary landholders who collected revenue, recognizing the nuances of local customs, navigating the sheer complexity of revenue collection within that existing framework. It was a remarkably pragmatic approach.
Okay, let's unpack Hastings' actual reforms because he was incredibly busy. He steps into this absolute mess. What's the very first problem on his plate, and how does he start to untangle it?
His immediate focus was administration. Straight away, 1772 onwards, he completely dismantled Clive's dual system. That thing had created two power centers and immense confusion.
Had to go.
Had to go. Hastings brought the company directly into provincial administration and revenue collection. This meant removing key Indian officials who had held significant power. Muhammad Reza Khan in Bengal, Raja Sitab Rai in Bihar.
Consolidating power.
And centralizing it. He moved the treasury from Murshidabad to Calcutta, establishing Calcutta as the new capital, the new seat of government.
So the company takes civil justice directly, and Hastings also lessens the right of Nizamat, which is defense, peace, criminal justice, directly from the Nawab.
Correct.
And in a further move to consolidate power and, let's face it, funds, the Nawab of Bengal's annual allowance was slashed. Big time.
Huge cut. From 26 lakhs of rupees, that's 2.6 million down to 16 lakhs, a significant reduction.
Wow. Okay, what about revenue reforms? Equally ambitious.
Oh, yes. Aimed squarely at stabilizing the company's very shaky finances. Hastings ensured the company collected revenue directly, bypassing those traditional local agents, the MLs.
Cutting out the middleman.
Effectively, yes. He appointed English collectors in districts, assisted by native officers, to handle both revenue collection and some administration. He tried different land settlement policies.
Like the 5-year one?
That was one experiment, yeah. It later proved problematic, actually, and they reverted to an annual bidding system in 1777.
And to oversee all this, a board of revenue in Calcutta. Now, he intended apparently to protect the riots, the cultivators, the farmers. But what were the big downsides of these changes for them? Did it work out?
Well, despite his intentions, the system had serious flaws for the cultivators. For instance, zamindars were supposed to issue clear pattas documents specifying the revenue owed.
But they often didn't.
Often didn't happen, leaving peasants really vulnerable. A major defect was also that these English collectors, whose main job was revenue, could also dispense justice.
Ah, conflict of interest.
Big time, often led to unfair outcomes. Plus, the English reliance on their Indian subordinates meant they didn't always fully grasp the system's flaws or how it was actually impacting people on the ground.
But still,
to his credit, this was Hastings' first serious attempt to bring some order, some system, to what was a chaotic and often exploitative setup.
Okay, moving on to economic reforms. Hastings made some pretty bold moves here, too. Getting rid of DS tax, those free passes company servants use for private trade.
Yes, that was huge. Those passes let them avoid customs duties on their own goods. Abolishing them must have significantly boosted the company's official revenues.
Makes sense.
He also recognized that too many small custom houses, these chowkies, were just hampering trade. So he drastically cut their number, keeping only 5 key ones: Calcutta, Hooghly, Murshidabad, Patna, Dhaka.
Streamlining things?
Exactly. Streamlining commerce. He lowered duties on most goods, but crucially, the company kept a lucrative monopoly on salt, betel nut, and tobacco.
Ah, the cash cows.
Precisely. Exempt from other taxes, hugely profitable. Then a flat 2.5% duty was applied to all other goods for both Indians and Europeans.
And he wasn't shy about acquisitions either, was he? Taking Kora and Allahabad from the Mughal emperor.
And immediately selling them to the Nawab Wazir of Oudh for 50 lakhs of rupees. Big money.
Plus getting more from the Nawab for helping him against the Rohillas. This sounds like a man very focused on the bottom line, filling the company's coffers.
He certainly was. Though he also tried, at least on paper, to curb some abuses. Issued ethical directives to Chakra. Company agents don't force workers, don't take personal shares. How effective that was, well.
And then judicial reforms, also around 1772.
Yes, equally comprehensive. He established a Diwani Adalat, a civil court, and a Faujdari Adalat, a criminal court, in each district.
Okay, so the civil courts, the Diwani Adalats, overseen by the English collector again.
Yes.
But the criminal courts, the Faujdari Adalats, were led by Indian officers, qazis, and muftis specifically.
That's right. And for appeals, 2 higher courts in Calcutta, the Sadar Diwani Adalat Supreme Civil Court and the Sadar Nizamat Adalat Supreme Criminal Court.
That sounds like a pretty structured system, actually. Much more formal.
It was a huge step towards formalizing justice. To ensure consistency, a simple code was compiled for the personal laws of Hindus and Muslims. So civil cases followed community laws, criminal cases largely followed Muslim law.
And the judges.
Given fixed salaries, prohibited from taking presents or bribes, trying to ensure impartiality, all proceedings had to be recorded, time limits set for cases, and really severe physical punishments or financial penalties, like torture for extracting fines, were officially abolished.
Right.
These reforms truly began to lay the groundwork for a more formal, British-influenced legal system in Bengal.
Wow. He really did bring a lot of order to what sounds like a wildly chaotic situation, but despite these massive reforms and the sheer scale is mind-boggling, a storm was brewing back home in Britain.
Indeed.
Upon his return to England, Warren Hastings faced this barrage of charges, mainly centered on four big incidents: his actions in the Rohilla War, the really controversial trial of Nan Kumar, the dealings with Raja Chait Singh, and the notorious case of the Begums of Oud.
The Big Four.
And while he was later technically honorably acquitted of all charges, these remain, as you said earlier, dirty spots on his name.
Let's start with the Rohilla War, around 1772-1773. Basically, the Marathas attacked the Rohillas, who were north of Oud. Hastings decided to back the Nawab of Oud against the Rohillas.
Why? Money.
Money was a big part of it. This move secured substantial funds for the company, hundreds of thousands of pounds, for lands, support, a brigade. Hastings argued it eliminated the threat and benefited the company and its key ally, the Nawab.
Bad.
But this was his first major controversy. It met bitter opposition from three new council members who arrived in India, challenged his authority, and straight up accused him of corruption over it. The battle lines were drawn early.
Then came the devastating trial of Nand Kumar, 1775 to 76. Nand Kumar, an influential Brahmin, directly accused Hastings of taking massive bribes.
Several lakhs of rupees, hundreds of thousands of pounds in today's terms, including a huge sum, supposedly, for appointing a guardian to a Nawab's son.
And Hastings' enemies on the council jumped on this.
Immediately. Particularly his fierce rival, Philip Francis, saw their chance.
But then Nand Kumar himself ends up on trial.
Yes. He was subsequently charged with forgery by a Calcutta merchant, tried by Chief Justice Sir Elijah Impey, an old-school friend of Hastings, importantly.
Oh, convenient.
Very. Nand Kumar was found guilty and sentenced to death. This verdict was, and pretty much still is, universally condemned as a judicial murder.
Why specifically?
Several reasons. Profound doubts about whether the Supreme Court even had jurisdiction over natives like Nand Kumar, the lack of any appeal to the king in council. And crucially, while forgery was a crime, the death penalty had never, ever been applied for it before in Bengal.
So it looked like revenge.
Exactly. Widely perceived as revenge to silence a key accuser, and it undeniably strengthened Hastings' hand against the council opposition.
Okay, next up, the affairs of Raja Chait Singh of Benares, starting around 1775.
Right. Hastings, perpetually desperate for funds to finance the company's very expensive wars, started demanding extra money from Raja Chait Singh.
Wasn't there an agreement?
There was. The Raja's lands had been transferred to the company in 1775 for a fixed annual tribute, but Hastings demanded an extra 5 lakhs in 1778, more in 1779, directly violating that agreement. Pure extortion, really.
And it escalated.
Oh, yes. In 1780, the demands went up again, 2,000 horses and troops. When the Raja couldn't comply, Hastings personally went to Benares, had him arrested, slapped a huge fine on him, 50 lakhs, and sent in troops.
Wow.
The Raja's soldiers resisted, actually massacred some British troops, and the Raja fled. Hastings then just installed the Raja's nephew and promptly demanded double the original tribute.
That sounds tyrannical.
It was widely viewed that way back in Britain. Tyrannical, unjust, brutal, drew severe criticism.
And finally, the case of the Begums of Oud, also kicking off around 1775.
Another grim one.
Yep.
After the death of Nawab Wazir Shuja Uddaulah, his son, Asaf Uddaulah, struggled financially. He couldn't maintain the British troops stationed there or pay his debts to the company.
And Hastings needed money, again.
Always needed money. He pressed the new Nawab Wazir to clear his arrears. The Nawab Wazir then suggested, perhaps under duress, that his mother and grandmother, the Begums of Oud, who were known to be very wealthy, yield their family jewels and riches to settle the accounts.
Hastings agreed.
Hastings agreed, and sent British troops to Faizabad to seize their wealth. The methods used were horrifyingly condemned. Reports of torture of the Begum's eunuch servants to extract the money.
That's appalling.
Sir Alfred Lyell famously called it the employment of personal severities under the superintendence of British officers in order to extract money from women and eunuchs is an ignoble kind of undertaking. Just awful stuff, decried as mean, dishonest, unjustified, indefensible.
These were the seismic events, the 4 big charges that ultimately led to his impeachment when he got back.
Absolutely. They formed the core of the case against him.
So Hastings returns to Britain, June 1785. Initially, things look okay.
Yeah, surprisingly well received at first. He had an audience with King George III, got a vote of thanks from the East India Company directors. He was probably hoping for that Irish peerage, thinking he'd weathered the storm.
But the opposition wasn't having it.
Not a chance. The Whigs, led by heavyweights like Edmund Burke, Hastings' old nemesis Philip Francis, Charles James Fox, Richard Brinsley Sheridan, they quickly launched their attack. Partly political, sure, hoping to embarrass William Pitt's government.
And Francis laid out specific charges.
11 specific charges, yes.
Yeah.
Really detailed accusations.
What's fascinating here is Pitt's role. Pitt and Henry Dundas initially defended Hastings, didn't they? Even called him the savior of the British Empire in Asia.
They did. But then, crucially, Pitt declared Hastings' punishment of Raja Chait Singh excessive. That was the turning point. It gave the green light, effectively.
And the anti-Hastings motion passed in the Commons?
Pass 1/1979. That really galvanized the opposition and set the impeachment in motion.
So, May 21st, 1787, Hastings is arrested, brought before the House of Lords, prosecuted by this impeachment committee, 19 members, a rare and very serious process.
Reserved for the highest public officials accused of major wrongdoing. High stakes.
The trial itself kicks off February 13th, 1788 in Westminster Hall. Became this huge public spectacle, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Everyone who was anyone wanted to be there. Edmund Burke delivered this incredibly powerful 4-day opening address. Hastings himself later admitted that for the first half hour, Burke made him feel the most culpable man on earth.
Imagine that, the power of oratory.
Truly dramatic.
eBay.
But then the trial just dragged on and on for 7 years. It didn't sit continuously, mind you.
7 years. Public interest must have faded.
Completely. Especially after the French Revolution kicked off in 1789, bigger things were happening. Initially, he was hammered in the popular press, cartoons depicting him as monstrous. But public attitudes gradually shifted.
How so?
Partly because perceptions of his accusers declined. Burke became seen by some as obsessive. There's that famous Gilray cartoon depicting Hastings as the noble savior of India being assaulted by a demonic Burke and Fox. Shows how things change.
And the defense got a major boost late in the trial.
Huge boost. April 1794, testimony from none other than Lord Cornwallis, Hastings' successor as Governor General.
What did he say?
Cornwallis flatly rejected accusations that Hastings had ruined Britain's reputation in India, said Hastings was universally popular with the inhabitants, and that he, Cornwallis, never found cause to impeach his character. Powerful stuff from his successor.
Plus other witnesses.
William Larkins, the former Accountant General of Bengal, also testified, denying Hastings had pocketed illicit money. Hastings' core defense was complex, essentially arguing he acted like an Indian ruler would need to act in that context.
A tricky argument for a British court.
Very. Applying Indian political norms versus British legal and moral standards.
So the verdict finally comes April 23, 1795.
Yep. By this point, a third of the lords who started the trial had actually died. Only 29 were left to vote.
And the result?
On most of the 16 charges, Hastings was found not guilty, unanimously on many. On 3 charges, a few peers voted guilty, but he was still comfortably cleared by a majority vote on every single charge.
So acquitted, was that expected by then?
By the end, yes, the acquittal had become largely expected. The momentum had shifted. Burke, however, was utterly frustrated, remained convinced of Hastings' guilt until his own death in 1797.
What's so insightful about this whole trial, beyond Hastings' personal fate, is how it became this wider debate, wasn't it? About the East India Company, the empire.
Absolutely. It crystallized a fundamental clash between two visions of empire. You had Hastings' idea, perhaps, of absolute power, conquest, acting decisively for national interests, even if it meant bending rules.
Versus Burke's vision.
Versus Burke's vision of sovereignty being based on responsibility, on recognizing the inherent rights of the colonized people, on trusteeship. A profound difference in philosophy.
Okay, let's talk legacy. The personal cost for Hastings must have been immense.
Financially crippling. He was ruined. Left with debts of £70,000, a colossal sum then. He'd funded his own legal defense, estimated at £71,000. Unlike many other company officials, he hadn't returned with a massive personal fortune.
Did he get any help?
Eventually, yes. The East India Company compensated him later with a £50,000 loan and a £4,000 annual pension. That finally allowed him to fulfill his lifelong dream of buying back his family's ancestral estate, Daylesford.
And his reputation? Did he recover?
Remarkably, yes, to a degree. Despite being out of public office, he was still recognized as the expert on Indian matters. In an almost unprecedented gesture, members of Parliament actually stood up when he entered to give testimony on India in 1813 during the Napoleonic Wars. A real sign of respect, of rehabilitation in a way.
And the trial itself, it led to real systemic changes, right?
Definitely. Ironically, his successors, starting with Cornwallis, were granted the wider, more unified powers that Hastings himself had argued for during his time. Made governance more streamlined.
And Parliament stepped in more.
Crucially, yes. Pitt's India Act of 1784, passed even before the impeachment started, moved much of the supervision of India from the East India Company directors to a new political board of control in London. That signified much greater crown control, government control over Indian affairs.
And it also reflected changing moral standards back home.
I think so. You had influences like the Wesleyan revival heightening a sense of public morality. The focus began to shift slowly from just grab territory, grab money, which had been more acceptable towards this idea of just administration, even within an imperial context.
So when we try to sum up his legacy, it's complicated.
Extremely. The accusations against him clearly had substance. Some of his actions were deeply questionable, even by the standards of the time. Yet many argued his conduct, however flawed, actually compared favorably to other imperial figures, and his misfortunes, paradoxically, led to better British administration in India eventually.
He's definitely credited with consolidating British rule, laying foundations for administration.
Absolutely. He undeniably strengthened the British position and paved the way for much deeper British involvement in Indian politics.
And it's a big, but that governing in their own way philosophy, however respectful it seemed.
It was still fundamentally colonial, wasn't it?
Right.
Aimed at ruling more effectively, more sustainably, not at treating Indians as equals. The knowledge gained through things like the Asiatic Society was ultimately used to strengthen British control, even if that control was sometimes exercised with more cultural sensitivity.
A truly complex tapestry, then. Groundbreaking reforms mixed with serious ethical questions.
He remains one of history's most compelling, fascinating, and deeply conflicted figures. No easy answers with Hastings.
What an incredible deep dive. We've really wrestled with the dual nature of Warren Hastings' time in India, those widespread, vital reforms he pushed through to stabilize things, and the huge controversies that led to that epic impeachment trial back in Britain.
A real saga.
And here's something for you, the listener, to ponder. Warren Hastings was ultimately acquitted of all charges, cleared by the House of Lords. Yet his name remains undeniably tangled up with accusations of corruption, tyranny, abuse of power.
The stain remains, in a way.
So given everything we've discussed, the immense challenges he faced, the chaos he inherited, the shifting moral landscape of the British Empire, do you think his acquittal was a true vindication of his actions? Or was it perhaps more a reflection of the messy political realities, the power dynamics, and maybe even the ambiguities of the era he operated within? Something to think about.